Okay, so good evening, everybody. Uh, this is Farooq Nair. I am the Chief Information Security Officer for Orion, which is the Research and Education Network for Ontario. I'm also the subject matter lead for Ontario Cybersecurity Higher Education Consortium. I have with me Michael Ball, who is a virtual CISO, and he will introduce himself.
Hi there, I'm Michael Ball. I'm virtual CISO working with Team CISO. We've got a number of small companies that we look after. I've got 30 years in information security in mostly the insurance industry, and looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you, Ball. Thank you, Michael, for accepting this discussion invite/meeting invite. And of course, this is being done in the wake of the recent, this is as recent as last night, about the recent data breach at Capitalone. There has been lots of information which is flowing out there on social media, on news website, on news channel. And I just wanted to take the opportunity of having a more candid conversation with Michael about his views about this data breach, how it affects us as individuals, how it affects Canadians, what are the lessons learned, what can individuals do, what can organizations do? Because we're hearing about data breaches almost every week now, and it affects all of us as individuals, not just as security leaders, but as individuals. So just wanted to have a conversation with Michael on that. So.
Right.
Yeah, so let's start off this discussion. I know since last night we've been hearing lots of things about this breach, but Michael, what is the first thing which came to your mind when you got this news last night?
So right away they told us what was accessed. So a whole bunch of credit card applications from I think 2006 to 2018, 2019. Most of them were American credit card applications, but they almost, so they said, there were some social security numbers, SSN in the States. And then, oh, by the way, as an afterthought, like 1 million Canadian social insurance numbers. But they almost made it sound like it was no big deal.
Yeah, that came as a surprise. I think about 10 a.m. this morning, Canadian news outlets and channels started breaking that news to us, saying that about 6 million Canadians may be affected, and 1 million social insurance numbers would be at stake. Could have been compromised. And I think to your point, one of the things which I've observed in the past is that U.S. news outlets don't make a big deal about data breaches.
Yeah.
It's probably they don't have, the culture is different over there. Probably don't have as strict data privacy laws as we do.
Mm-hmm.
So that could have been one of the reasons.
Right.
Yeah. Other thing, yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
It'd be interesting in the days to come to find out if they're going to do anything at all to the individuals who were in that million or 6 million social insurance numbers. Are we going to get notified that our cards were implicated in this breach, or what is that going to look like?
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think this goes back to the big Equifax data breach, which happened about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it took a while to probably acknowledge that the data of many Canadians was actually at stake at that time or affected. And I think it was until last week that data privacy officer at the federal level actually has fined Equifax now, I think.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Now, one of the things that I'm pondering around this, this was an S3 bucket that was found. It was sitting up in an Amazon cloud service. Would this have happened as easily had this been in internal infrastructure? Like, I know we're all sort of moving our stuff out to the cloud and using Elasticsearch and other things that are cloud-based. Are we doing our due diligence in moving our stuff out there? Are we protecting it as well as we would if this were infrastructure internal to our our own data centers.
No, I think that was another important aspect of this breach. I mean, was there due diligence conducted around this? And I just want to quote a conversation I was having with some other individuals who represent Canadian banks. I don't want to name them, but I was
Yep.
part of a roundtable discussion last week, and we were actually having a discussion about cloud security. And of course, what motivated organizations in Canada or the US or globally to move towards the cloud? And and was there sufficient due diligence? Were the right stakeholders involved? Because one of the things which came up in that conversation was that who were the decision makers when you moved over the cloud?
Sure.
Was your privacy office involved? Was there a privacy impact assessment? Was your compliance team involved? Was there like security baseline which was followed? Is there an ongoing oversight on your cloud service provider and all that? And in most cases, what I was told was that usually uh, the CIO or the CTO is the person making the call, and at times they might involve the legal office or the
Right.
legal counsel. And at times, the legal counsel does not have the expertise or the background on privacy. And in most cases, audit, security, and compliance are brought in after the fact, after they have onboarded with them, after they sign the agreement. And in fine print, in most of the cloud-based agreements, be it infrastructure as a service or software as a service or platform as a service, most of the responsibilities lie with the customer, not with the
Sure.
service. So, what are your thoughts on that, Michael?
And you're absolutely right. This needs to be developed from the beginning as a program. So when you move a new application out to a cloud service, like an internal one, security is part of the team, and privacy and your legal team, everybody needs to be part of that project management kickoff. And through the lifecycle development of the application, there needs to be checks and balances all along. Now, I will admit, several companies, in Canada have come forward and requested third-party assessments, security assessments, and privacy assessments of their cloud builds. So I'm quite happy about that. But I've talked to a number of companies where their line of business basically set up an application in AWS or Azure, and the infrastructure team was not part of it at all, nor was any other. There was no privacy. It was just the line of business needed something. Let's get it done. Let's build it.
No.
So.
Yeah, I agree with that. The other aspect, which is often seen as a big risk when you're moving over the cloud, is the aspect of shadow IT.
Yep.
I mean, in an organization, any business could one day say, you know what, we're moving to the cloud. We don't need to talk to IT. We don't need to involve the right stakeholders.
Yep.
All we need to do is just sign up. And what do you need for signing up? Just your credit card, right?
Sure. Well, that's kind of what I was talking about. So purchasing a cloud service with your credit card is one thing, but many companies even allow the line of business to hire third-party developers and develop business applications, publish them out to a cloud service, and the actual security team and IT team aren't even a part of it. They don't know it exists.
Exactly. Yeah. The other thing which I'm not sure about, but I just wanted to bring that up, was compliance with PCI DSS. Now, this is Capital One, which has been affected, which we all know is one of the large credit card issuers and acquirers who are mandated to comply with PCI DSS and corresponding payment security standards. The thing which comes as a surprise to me is that with the data which has been compromised, does that fall within the cardholder data or not? And if that was the case, was there any due diligence? Was this part of the scope or not?
So reading through the affidavit, it looks like there were portions of data that were encrypted and portions of data that were actually tokenized. So they do have appropriate processes in place for some of it. But the concerning part was the the credit card applications. So
Mm.
so they've got tens of thousands of applicants and all of their personal information while they were applying for a Capital One credit card. So
Right.
once they acquired the credit card and all that information may have been secured, but all the PCI in the applications themselves was available in this S3 bucket.
Exactly. Yeah, that's concerned. Yeah, so just part of that could have been part of the scope of the credit card holder information, but
Yeah.
applicant information, which perhaps might not fall within that category, but that does qualify as PII, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so that is concerning. Yeah. And the other thing which I noticed when the news broke last night was that the news was came up when the person who was involved in the breach was arrested,
Yes.
was perhaps charged, and was presented before the court. And so I think everything was well coordinated in terms of when the news had to be broken to the press. What are your thoughts on how this whole thing went? And in your opinion, the individual was responsible? Was it the organization, or was it both?
Yeah, so I've got mixed thoughts on this. So first of all, the organization themselves absolutely responsible in that they did not have due diligence in securing the data. Now, things happen, right? Errors happen, and so apparently this was a misconfigured firewall. The notice went out that there was a breach, and they fixed it rather quickly. So they knew they knew how to fix it. They knew what was wrong. What I'm having trouble with is we now know everything there is to know about Paige, this person that was arrested. They've fully provided all of the details on this person. Yes, Paige admitted doing this. There's all kinds of evidence pointing to her, and I get it. But does she not deserve a little bit of privacy and I don't know what I'm looking for here. A little bit of respect until the court process has gone through.
Mm-hmm.
Right now everybody's going through her Twitter account, everybody's going through her GitHub account. Yes, I understand they're public. However, most of us wouldn't have known about them had this not been released and brought to a head. So I don't know whether that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's pretty concerning. I know. I mean, it in a way does show that Capital One or perhaps AWS took the action, got the law enforcement involved in everything, and everything was fixed. But I mean, as an individual, I mean, she's been scarred. I mean, let's say that. I mean,
Yeah, and
yeah.
reading through some of this, I'm not totally sure, and this is not my area of expertise, but I'm not totally sure that there isn't a little bit of depression issues or whatever, and not saying that that's right, but again, until the court of law has placed judgment and done their bit, should we know as much as we know about her today?
Exactly. And I think, of course, it's still not clear if all the information which she was able to gain access to, has that been shared with on the dark web, or people who could have misused that, because that is something which still has
Right.
to be investigated. I mean, what she did was wrong. I mean,
Yep.
of course, we all agree with that. But has that information been put up on the dark web for sale, or has been shared with people who could use that for malicious purposes?
So according to the affidavit,
Yeah.
it was when she indicated that she wanted to share that information is when the arrest was made. So prior to that, she absolutely admitted to basically breaking in, finding credentials, writing a script to scrape the credentials, finding 700 folders of information from Capital One, and syncing it. So basically making a backup of it, quote unquote, stealing that information.
Mm.
And then at the point that she indicated she wanted to share it is when the arrest was made. So I don't believe the information was shared, and the affidavit doesn't indicate that it was shared, but we'll find out in the days to come.
We will, yes. Yeah. So in terms of lessons learned, I mean, Capital One is a big financial institutions. I think all the financial institutions in the US and in Canada are probably thinking, okay, what can they do to try to avoid this? What are they doing wrong?
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Also, so are lessons being learned? I mean, so this is right on the heels of the Equifax, as you said earlier. And this was a firewall misconfiguration. So in a data center, in a on-prem solution, you do firewall reviews regularly, and this could have been caught. I won't say it should have been caught, but it could have been caught. And are they doing third-party assessments on this infrastructure? Are they doing penetration tests to validate the configuration? Because I'm sure if this is sitting out in an Amazon instance out there, and a third-party assessor were to look at it legitimately on Capital One's behest, they would have found this.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The other thing which comes to my mind is that in terms of being a cloud service provider, would Capital One have had any idea about who at AWS does have access to the instance? How could they have assured that? Or what controls could they be in place in order to ensure that?
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to that. The expectation is that the cloud service provider simply stands up the infrastructure, and all of the operating systems and everything under that are managed by Capital One or by the subscriber. So, the expectation in that type of service is that you manage and you own everything yourself. But again, these are all things that will probably come out in the days to come.
Yeah. In terms of the Canadians being affected, I'm sure that the data privacy, the federal data privacy office is probably involved by now. They would be probing this right now. I'm not sure if OSFI is going to be involved, but what are the key things that a Canadian Capital One customer should be concerned about? How should they approach it? I know the first thing which would come to the mind is like credit monitoring and everything. But what do you think is the best way to go for a Canadian affected customer?
So I guess as a customer, reach out to Capital One yourself and get a request as to who has had access to that data and where has it been used. We now know that the social insurance numbers of X number of million Canadians, so probably every Canadian Capital One client, myself included, basically was in that list. But we're not going to go changing our social insurance numbers. So I don't know. We need a statement from them as to how they're going to protect our credit moving forward.
Yeah. And I think we'll probably, I'm not sure if CRA would get involved, but I think we'll probably need some more information from our data privacy office in probably Ontario and the federal one. And I'm sure if there are other, I'm sure there are other Canadians across Canada who are affected in other provinces, they would seek this information. But I think as Canadians ourselves, we are concerned now. I mean, we do. There are American banks, there are American companies who do operate in Canada. Like we were most of the Canadians were victims of the Equifax breach. Capital One is there. Marriott SPG breach happened last year. They were handed over a fine by their privacy officer also. But I think as Canadian consumers, we are concerned about this, and I think I'm not sure how our federal privacy officer or provincial privacy officer intends to handle this, but I think they might need to play a more stronger role over here in order to ensure that the Canadians' privacy is respected, and of course our laws are complied with too.
Right.
Anyways, apart from this, yeah, I was thinking if there's anything else which we want to discuss about this breach. Any other thoughts from your side, in order to what organizations could do, what consumers can do moving forward?
Well, and anybody that's setting up a cloud service, whether it's a third party building it for you or you're building it yourself, getting a third party assessment of that service. So, like you would pen test your own firewalls and applications within your own data center, get a third party architectural and penetration test regularly of that service. Treat it like it's an on-prem application. As I said, I fully feel that had a third party done regular assessments of this infrastructure, firewall misconfigurations probably would have been seen much earlier.
No, I'm sure about that. Yeah. The other thing which also comes to mind is certification. Like most of the cloud service providers say that they have like a SaaS report. Most of them claim that they are ISO certified, or they are following some kind of standards. But I think we need to have the third party validation in place also, or validation in place. Like most of the big banks, they have their compliance and audit departments, which can go about doing those validations on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
And of course, so that was the thing. The other thing which also comes to mind is roles and responsibilities.
Right.
Of many individuals. I mean, it's not just people on the infrastructure side. There are more people who should be involved in the organization. So who should be the primary stakeholders who should be involved in this, apart from the frontline people? I mean, apart from people who have operation responsibilities.
Well, and much like any, this is just an extension of your data center, right? So from an application perspective, you've got your privacy officer, you got your legal team, you got your auditors, the entire, CIO, CISO. They all need to be involved in assessing and signing off on an application, regardless of where it's located, and then the regular maintenance of that. So on an annual basis, is it still secure? Are we doing our due diligence?
Yeah. Okay, and I think the last thing which I want to talk about is the legal recourse. I mean, with the data of about, what we're talking about, 1 million Canadians or 6 million Canadians who have been affected, could we possibly be looking at a class action suit in the coming days?
Well, and again, it's outside of my experience, my friend, so I can't really speak to that.
Yeah.
What we need to understand from Capital One is whether that data was actually, so we understand that it's stolen and it's sitting in a file and Paige had access to it. Did it go anywhere other than that? Has it been, publicly displayed? Does anybody else have access to it? From what I understand, there's a GitHub repository with a bunch of stuff where the files in there have other people access them since it was announced. So again, this, part of the disclosure process by showing this GitHub account with all the tooling in it, did that expose this more?
Yeah.
So
I should probably wait to get more information on that.
Yeah.
Anyways, Michael, thanks a lot for taking out time for this discussion. Let's see if we need to have any follow-up discussion on this, but we probably next time we can do a discussion on some other topic, but this was something which was a pressing issue. And
thank you. This was fun. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Michael.